The lock refused me like a mouth that knew my name and chose not to say it. After the funeral, I drove home on autopilot, still wearing the black dress that felt like borrowed dignity. The porch light was on, like courtesy. The key slid in. It stopped a centimeter shy of forgiveness. I tried again because ritual is a stubborn animal. The brass gave me the same answer. Inside, behind the frosted glass, a shape crossed the hallway at a practiced pace and then slowed down, as if it had just remembered something worth savoring. I knocked the way people knock on their own front door when they are testing how much self-respect can stand on a welcome mat. The deadbolt sighed back. Diana, my mother-in-law, opened to a width that could fit a polite conversation and not much else. Her lipstick was the color of words said at the wrong time. Behind her, the smell of Earl Grey drifted from the kitchen. She was using my wedding china. "Rachel," she said, as if she'd just found a smudge on a mirror. "We were about to call you." "We?" I repeated, looking past her shoulder. In the living room, the throw pillows had been rearranged into a geometry I didn't recognize. A suitcase sat open on the rug, like certainty. Jocelyn, my sister-in-law, appeared with a trash bag of hangers and gave me a smile that couldn't decide whether it was sorry or relieved. "The locks," Diana said, following my eyes, "were a safety concern. We've taken stewardship of the home until the family sorts things properly." "The family?" I said. "I'm the family." It came out flatter than bravado and sharper than grief. Diana tilted her head, a woman who, in a different life, could have closed real estate deals with that angle alone. "Ethan's family," she said, with the clean confidence of a person who believes nouns have sides. "This house belongs with us. It's always belonged with us." My throat was a quiet room. "This house has a mortgage with my name on it." "That can be corrected," she said, almost kindly. "You look tired, dear." "Go to a hotel tonight. Tomorrow we'll sit with counsel and reach an arrangement. It's what Ethan would have wanted." The hallway mirror over her shoulder caught my face in a thin strip. I looked like a woman who knew where the knives were and had decided to wash them before using them. "You think you can evict me the day we buried your son?" It wasn't a question. Diana's smile became administrative. "No one is evicting anyone. We are protecting assets." She soft-stepped the door an inch closer to shut. "Rachel, you are welcome to collect a bag." "Out of my house," I said. "Out of my son's house," she corrected, and the door finished the sentence. I stood on the porch long enough to hear the kettle click off again. The night air was a cooler hand than any I had been offered at church. I texted the funeral home from the steps. "Please remove Diana Cross and Jocelyn Cross from any visitation lists. Family access restricted by surviving spouse. Thank you." The director replied faster than grief travels. "Understood. We're sorry for what you're experiencing." I drove to a motel on 82nd that smelled like bleach devoted its life to losing. The clerk slid a key card at me with the sympathy of a man who has seen worse and will again by morning. In the room, the art over the bed was a framed photograph of water trying to be still. I took off my shoes and sat on the edge of the mattress because sitting is a plan when plans are a luxury. I read the text messages I wasn't going to answer. "We should meet," from a number I didn't save, but I knew it like you know the smell of a house you don't want to enter. Langley, Diana's lawyer. "Call me now, Diana," and a hesitant, "Are you okay?" from Jocelyn, as if she'd tripped over a conscience in the dark and wasn't sure whether to pick it up. I called Angela instead. She'd handled a contract for my design business last year and done it with the neat aggression of a woman who ties her hair back before telling a room it's wrong. "Say it once," she said, after hello. I did. Changed locks, stewardship, arrangement, Ethan would have wanted. There was a brief weather pattern of silence on the line. "Don't go back alone," Angela said. and don't go back without me. For tonight, lodge an incident report online for documentation. Lock change without notice. Screenshot everything. Sleep with your phone charging and your do not disturb off for me and only me. Tomorrow morning we get you inside. I'm not waiting until tomorrow, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. It wasn't defiance. It was architecture. There's a side door off the laundry that sticks if you lift while you push. Ethan never fixed it. He said the stickiness was a feature. Angela exhaled. You love a metaphor. Fine. You go in, you collect documents, you do not engage. If you have to talk, you record. If they call the police, you stay calm and say, spouse, mortgage holder, unlawful exclusion. If anything feels wrong, you leave. Rachel, you leave. Copy, I said. The way people say copy when they plan to disobey only if necessary. I drove back with the headlights off for the last half block because loyalty makes you do stupid things like stealth. The side gate groaned the way fences complain when they think they might still be asked to keep a secret. I lifted while I pushed. The laundry door sighed and then let itself be convinced. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and strangers rehearsing ownership. The washing machine lid was up. Someone had done a load of towels and left them there to cool like arrogance. I stayed on the shadow line where hallway meets wall and moved the way habit teaches you when you've memorized your own home in the dark. Ethan's office sat at the end of the hall, the door half closed like a throat not wanting to swallow. I slipped inside and clicked on the desk lamp because the ceiling light would tell the house too loudly that I was here. His desk was a shrine to angles. Pens aligned, a coaster dry and square, a paperweight like a river stone, engraved with the kind of quote that promises a life its owner was too busy to take. Third drawer left. That's where he kept the things that were either important or unimportant, depending on whether his day had gone the way he had told it to. The drawer stuck and then gave. A black folder lay on top with a label in his block letters. Postnup, do not discard. My pulse did a slow, patient thing. Not running, counting. I opened it. The notary seal was the punctuation Ethan always respected. Two signatures sat opposite each other like chairs pulled up to a truce table. His and mine. The terms were unambiguous in the way clarity can feel like violence. If he died, the house and any accounts tied to it migrated to me alone, with a clause that anticipated precisely the argument Diana had been rehearsing to prevent interference or claims by third parties not resident or party to mortgage. My name, my address, a date 6 months ago. I remember the day now, the way he had scheduled romance like a dentist appointment. Let's sign some things, Ray. It's just smart. I had rolled my eyes and signed because love is sometimes the same shape as trust and laziness. Under the postnup was an envelope with my name. The R looped a little too high because he always started letters as if climbing a hill. I slid a fingernail under the flap and didn't look away. Rachel, if you're reading this, there's a version of me who underestimated a woman he overestimated for too long. If Mom tries anything, give this to a lawyer you trust. Don't argue, document. Don't let them perform grief at you. That's not grief, that's theater. E, on cue, a floorboard in the hall did what floorboards do when someone is rehearsing presence. I slid the folder into my tote and put the letter in my jacket like a rib. I turned off the lamp and stood very still until the house forgot to listen. In the kitchen, the clink of porcelain looked for an audience. I left the way I came, with the laundry door promising to make a scene later, and choosing instead to keep my secret one more time. Angela read the postnup at a diner that believed in pie as policy and nodded halfway through the first page. Ethan did one thing right, she said. Good. She photographed every page and emailed herself and me copies with a subject line that would look boring even to a thief. Now, no confrontations. We build a wall of paper, We do not tear at curtains. They're in my house, I said. They're in a house, she said. You are in a strategy. Next, file a police report for documentation only. Ask the officer to note the lock change and the exclusion. Then we send a letter to Diana's counsel that says what judges like to read. Your client has unlawfully excluded the surviving spouse. Postnuptial agreement notarized, attached. Mortgage statements attached. Any further attempts to enter or alter will be met with a temporary restraining order and sanctions. Also, Rachel, this is important. No social media, no texts you wouldn't want read aloud in a courtroom. Grief makes people eloquent and dumb. Save eloquence. Avoid dumb. I breathe the way people do when they realize breath is a job they can still do well. There's more, I said, and slid the envelope with Ethan's letter across the table. Angela read it once, then twice, the way a doctor rereads a scan that shows both bad news and a plan. He knew his mother, she said. He knew performance, I said. He performed too. Most of us do, she said, and closed the envelope like a curtain. We drove to the precinct. The officer at the desk had a face that had learned to wear patience like sunscreen. I kept my voice at indoor volume and said, unlawful exclusion, the way Angela had taught me to pronounce protection. He took the report, gave me a case number, and said a line I believed because it sounded like a man trying to keep his job. We can't make them kind, but we can write it down. On the way out, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. We will pursue our rights tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at your residence. Be available. Langley. I typed with 2 thumbs and no poetry. All communication through counsel. Do not return to my residence. Unlawful exclusion is documented. Spouse plus mortgage holder. Further entry equals TRO. R. I added Angela, who replied within 30 seconds with a forward to Langley and a paragraph of legal that felt like a warm coat. Back at the motel, I tried sleeping the way you try restarting a computer to fix a machine that knows the problem is human. My brain refused. It hummed like a refrigerator at 3 a.m. I made a list to give myself the illusion of verbs. 1. Call credit union for deed copy. 2. Pull last 12 mortgage statements. 3. Pull utilities in my name. 4. Find Ethan's neurologist note. The last item wasn't a hunch. It was a memory. 3 months ago, Ethan had done a battery of tests after he forgot a dentist appointment and a meeting on the same day and declared himself dying for 48 hours. The results came back so normal, the doctor had drawn a smiley face next to the words, "No cognitive impairment." Ethan had framed it as a joke. I had put the printout in the file cabinet under taxes/receipts/things we pretend we'll organize. I should have organized them. He should have lived. We both had our shoulders. Morning made the motel curtains into an X-ray. Angela texted at 6. Coffee and copies. Be ready at 8. Bring ID, mortgage docs. Anything with your name and the address in the same sentence. I showered in a stall that made me taller out of spite and dressed in clothes that didn't make promises they couldn't keep. At 8, she arrived with a portable scanner that had the energy of a small dog that believes it is a wolf. We made piles. We made a record. She took the neurologist's note the way soldiers take a bridge. They'll allege undue influence, she said, already writing the other side's brief, already dismantling it. They'll say Ethan wasn't of sound mind when he signed the postnup. This letter says otherwise. Judges don't like performances masquerading as concern. They like documents. We'll give them documents. At 9:30, my phone buzzed with a photo from Joseline. A stack of my clothes folded on the porch with a post-it, Rachel's. Under it, a text. I told Mom this wasn't right. I'm sorry. I typed and erased 5 versions of the sentence that would let both of us live with ourselves. I settled on, put them inside. Please don't leave my things in the open. She replied with a photo of the clothes now inside the door and a heart she probably didn't think about before sending. At 10 on the dot, a car I recognized from the last Thanksgiving pulled up in front of my house. Langley got out in a suit that hoped to impress a mirror, and Diana followed, her mouth set to audition. Angela and I were parked across the street because public is a kind of armor. "Film," Angela said, and I held the phone up where the camera could see grown adults behaving like parables. Langley knocked. He waited 30 seconds, then announced to the doorbell, camera, my doorbell camera, that his client was returning to the family home to secure essential items. Angela called out across the lawn like a neighbor who enjoys fireworks for the citation value. "Unlawful exclusion has been documented. Postnup is notarized. You have been notified. Please leave Langley attempted posture." The posture wilted under a sentence Angela had ready for the occasion. "The next time you try this, bring a court order and a conscience." One exists. One is rumored Diana looked at me with an expression that had almost certainly worked on men who needed to be told who they were. "You are cruel," she said. "You are erasing your husband's family." "I'm protecting his wishes," I said, and my voice didn't shake because I was standing on paper that knew how to bear weight. And mine? She wanted a scene. I gave her a record. Angela ushered us back to the car before the apology part of my brain could wake up and do what women's brains are taught to do: offer options to people who have already chosen their behavior. Back at Angela's office, we filed what needed filing: a letter to the court requesting affirmation of the postnup's validity and a temporary order enjoining Diana and any agent from entering, altering, or occupying the property. "Courts are slow until they aren't," Angela said. "We will not wait for a miracle speed. We build a speed of our own." My phone buzzed again. This time, the number belonged to a nurse at St. Vincent, the neurologist's office. "We received your records request," she said. Dr. Patel also noted in Mr. Cross's chart that he recommended a legal checkup to ensure documents matched his intentions. That was 4 months ago. She paused, the way kind people pause to let cruelty not happen. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said, and wrote down the sentence about intentions because in a courtroom, intention is the air under a wing. We planned the rest of the day like it was a heist, which in a way it was. We were stealing back a life from people who had borrowed it without asking. At 3 p.m., Angela would serve Langley. At 4, we would meet the locksmith I had hired to restore the locks to what they should have been yesterday and attach a smart deadbolt that sent me receipts when anyone lied to it. At 5, I would walk into my home with a police escort if needed, and at 6, I would sit at my own table and open a drawer and take out the receipt for the last mortgage payment in my name and let that piece of paper be my grace. At 2:58, Diana filed a petition. "Undue influence," the document said, in a font that always looks more reasonable than the people who choose it. "Cognitive decline. Estrangement. Danger of asset dissipation." The words were a stack of desperation with ribbon. Angela read it and her mouth did not move. She called the clerk. She filed our response. She attached the neurologist's letter, the postnup, the mortgage statements, the police report, the photos of my clothes on the porch like a yard sale of dignity, and Ethan's letter with the sentence about theater redact boxed except for the part a judge would want to see. "Give this to a lawyer you trust. Don't argue. Document." At 4, the locksmith arrived. He was the kind of man who talks to doors the way paramedics talk to pulse points. "Looks like someone got excited," he said, examining the new hardware Diana had installed. "I can fix excited." He worked with the concentration of a person who believes the world can be improved in increments of millimeters. When he finished, the bolt slid like a promise kept on time. He handed me 2 new keys and programmed the deadbolt, and when he left, the door and I inhaled together. I stepped into the house and closed the door behind me. The click from the inside sounded like a sound effect with a budget. The air smelled like my detergent again, because I had brought a bag and washed every towel in the machine to erase the lemon the way you erase a word you never chose. In the office, the desk lamp glowed the way lamps do when they have witnessed a crime and are ready to testify. I sat and made a list for the judge I hadn't met yet. What was mine? What had been at risk of not being mine? What I would not lose again? I placed the postnup in a clear sleeve like a museum would do with a map someone died for. I placed Ethan's letter beside it and thought, not for the first time, that love is a mess that sometimes cleans up after itself. My phone lit. Court set emergency hearing for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Be here at 8:15. Bring ID. Dress like you believe in yourself. Angela. I do, I said to the empty room, and the room believed me because rooms are generous when you let them be. The night before court is where people invent gods. I made tea instead. I walked the perimeter of my home and touched things with the tips of my fingers as if I were a museum guard, doing rounds in a gallery titled Proof of Life. In the guest room, the bed was made with the wrong corners. I remade it with the right ones because even pettiness is a form of control when control has been rationed. When I lay down, sleep came like a partner who finally decided to be on time. I woke before my alarm to a text from Jocelyn. I won't be there tomorrow. I can't listen to Mom say things I know aren't true. I typed back, take care of yourself. The rest will be handled. She sent back, I'm sorry, Rachel. And then, like a reflex, are you okay? I took a breath that had cost me a day and a life and said the truth I could afford. I will be. Court mornings teach you to iron your spine. I wore a navy dress that knew how to sit, low heels that didn't apologize, and a coat that made weather an elective. Angela met me on the courthouse steps with a folder that weighed the right amount. We're not here to be brilliant, she said. We're here to be clear. Inside, the emergency docket moved like a train that believed in schedules. Our names appeared on the screen, cross versus cross, so tidy the alphabet might as well have filed the petition. We took our seats at counsel table. Across the aisle, Diana sat with Langley, pearl earrings, hair in an updo that translated to respectable in any jurisdiction. She didn't look at me. She looked at the judge's bench as if it had been built to redeem her. The clerk called the case. The judge, silver hair, eyes that looked at paper the way a pilot looks at weather, took the bench, and everyone in the room stood up, because faith in furniture is part of the ritual. We sat. Langley rose and took a step forward, the step men take when they are about to say, Your Honor, as if they were practicing leadership. He laid out Diana's petition in the careful voice of a man describing a rescue mission, undue influence, cognitive decline, an estranged marriage maintained for appearances, a grieving mother merely trying to ensure her late son's wishes were honored. Angela stood without wasting an extra inch of oxygen. Your Honor, she said, we have documents. She handed up the postnuptial agreement, notarized 6 months old. The mortgage statements in my name, current. The police incident report documenting lock change exclusion. The neurologist's letter with the sentence no one could talk over. No cognitive impairment, advised to ensure legal documents reflect intentions. Then, like a small clear stone placed where it would be found, she offered the letter from Ethan, with the sensitive parts redacted and the essential sentence visible. If Mom tries anything, give this to a lawyer you trust. Don't argue. Document. The judge read silently, then out loud for the record. His voice hit the notary seal with respect, the way people say amen without meaning to. He looked up at Langley. Counsel, do you have any medical evidence to support your claim of cognitive decline? Langley tried to build a sentence and discovered his lumber had been repurposed. We have observations, he said. Family observations. Instances of forgetfulness. The judge glanced at the neurologist's letter again. Anecdote doesn't outrun a clean workup. Anything else? Langley pivoted. Estrangement, he said, like a man produces a spare tire. We have neighbors who will testify the relationship was performative. Angela remained standing, the file closed under her palm like a heartbeat. Your Honor, performative is the word people use when they mistake privacy for emptiness. She didn't smile. What we have is a signed, notarized instrument. What they have is a story that only works without paper. The judge leaned back, looked at Diana, and took the tone decent people reserve for moments when kindness is also instruction. Mrs. Cross, grief is not a license, he said. You may not change the locks on a surviving spouse. You may not invent incapacity where a doctor found none. Petition denied. Postnuptial agreement affirmed. I am issuing a temporary order enjoining you and your agents from entering or altering the property. Any violation will be contempt and will not go well. The words landed clean. Even the microphones seemed to prefer them. I didn't look at Diana, and she didn't look at me, because there are silences you earn and then decide to keep. Outside on the courthouse steps, Angela let out a measured breath. Paper wins, she said, and then added, softer, today. Today's enough, I said. We walked to the curb together. The air had the thin brightness of mornings that pretend they are later in the year. My phone buzzed. Funeral director, service at St. Matthew's has confirmed guest list per your request. Let us know if you need additional ushers. I typed, thank you. Please reserve the front pew for immediate family, myself only. He replied, understood. Do I post anything? I asked Angela, surprising myself with the question. Habit is a loud animal. No, she said. Let the narrative arrive on paper where it belongs. Online is a room where performance pays rent. We parted with a hug that didn't oversell itself. I went home. Not the motel, not the courthouse, but home, and stood in the entryway and listened to the house make the old sounds again. I made tea in a mug Ethan had chipped and stacked my documents on the table as if they could make a centerpiece better than flowers. The locksmith's app pinged, front door unlocked, 1:13 p.m., Rachel. A good machine telling me I existed. At 3, Jocelyn texted, can I come by, just me? I asked Angela. She typed back, yes. Public room, 10 minutes. Record anyway. Jocelyn arrived carrying a paper bag of things she had no right to call mine and exactly the right to deliver back. I told Mom I was going to get coffee, she said. That part is true. She handed me the bag, makeup bag, a sweater, a stack of mail rubber banded into submissiveness. I'm sorry, she said. I don't know what I thought. Watching her take over felt like watching a weather system. You assume you go inside and wait it out. You can also leave the county, I said, not unkindly. She let out a small sound that was almost a laugh and almost a cry. I never liked your taste in rugs, she said, but your kitchen. I always loved your kitchen. Thank you for not leaving my clothes on the porch, I said. It was a small thing and a true thing. She looked around like the room might take attendance. She's going to come to the service, she said, voice dropping into dread. She told the cousins she would. She won't, I said. She'll try, she said. Yes, I said. And then she'll leave. Jocelyn nodded, then offered something unexpected and useful. Mom rehearses. She practices her lines. She mimed a gesture I had seen in other rooms, hand on breastbone, eyes up, a small backward step, as if humility had tugged the hem of her dress. She'll say, I just want to say goodbye to my son. Jocelyn inhaled as if smelling a memory. Then she'll cry without tears. Thank you, I said. Rehearsal notes help. She gave a tiny broken smile. You handled court like a person who makes lists. I'm trying to learn. You can start by eating dinner, I said. Your mother's grief doesn't mean you don't get to chew. She gave me the kind of hug people give when they don't know where to put their arms and trust you to tell them. After she left, I walked the house and decided what needed doing before morning. I watered the philodendron because life is stubborn when you help it. I pressed the suit jacket I kept for the kind of days that feel like job interviews with fate. I placed the program draft on the table, simple, with Ethan's name and dates and a hymn he'd once called Not Terrible, and slept with my phone charging on the nightstand because Angela's voice had taken up residence in my good judgment. Morning. St. Matthew's wore stone the way old institutions wear certainty, beautifully and not always accurately. The sanctuary smelled like wood polish and old breath. An usher nodded me to the front pew. I sat alone. The quiet multiplied. People filed in with the choreography grief supplies so people don't have to invent one. I watched their eyes do the math of proximity and loss. The organist played a prelude we had not requested but didn't mind. The pastor approached and murmured the lines pastors learn to say between sincerity and utility. Then the back doors whispered and the weather system entered. Diana, pearls in place, dress suitable for both court and church, moved down the center aisle with a grace that had been taught in a different century. 2 cousins trailed, and behind them, like a moral footnote, Langley. She stopped midway, placed a hand on her chest, tilted her face toward the hymn board as if it were heaven's docket, and said in a voice aimed at the cheap seats, "I just want to say goodbye to my son." A murmur went through the congregation, the sound of polite people deciding whether to allow a scene to rent space in their mourning. I stood. The pastor looked at me, and I nodded. He nodded back, an economy of trust. I walked to the aisle and met her where the rug changed pattern. "Mrs. Cross," I said, because formality is armor, "you are not on the list for this service." She widened her eyes, letting light catch where tears would have been if this were a different story. "Rachel, please." "No," I said. The word was not loud. It was a key turned in a lock. "This is not a stage. This is a service. You may grieve outside. You may grieve at home. You may grieve 3 pews from the back at a mass of your choosing on a day that is not today. You may not rehearse here." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "I am his mother," she said, and the sentence tried very hard to be a verdict. "You are," I said, "and I am his wife. Today, that means something. An usher will walk you out. If you resist, the police will walk you out. I want the usher." For a second, I saw a flash of the woman under the performance, the one who had taught Ethan to fold napkins and overwater plants and apologize quickly for the wrong things. Then the performance returned, as loyal as any habit. "This is cruelty," she said softly to the witnesses, and turned and walked down the aisle with her head high and her grief arranged like furniture that matched. I sat. The pastor adjusted his glasses, found the beginning again, and began. The service was simple. Hymn, scripture, a short eulogy that did not lie about a complicated man. I spoke for 3 minutes because brevity is sometimes the most honest measure of affection. I did not collapse. I did not ask the building to hold me up. I stood because I could, and sat because it was time. After, outside on the church steps, people touched my elbow the way condolences have learned to. Cousins looked at their shoes. The sky held itself together the way skies do when they know the bar for weather is low. Jocelyn lingered, shy. "You did the right thing," she said. "She doesn't know how to live without an audience." "She'll learn," I said, "or she won't." We drove home, and I unlocked the door and let the click from the inside remind me who was speaking. The afternoon unfolded into chores, because chores are the calendar's way of telling you life is still available. I stacked sympathy cards into piles, handwritten, printed, Corporate. I changed the sheets. I made soup, too much of it, and ate half a bowl. I stood by the window and watched the street manage itself. At 5, the doorbell rang. The smart lock app showed no new code entry, only the camera's clean rectangle of someone waiting. I checked the screen. A courier, the kind who wears competence like a uniform. I opened the door. He handed me a padded envelope and asked for a signature. "From Langley and Associates," he said, in a tone that declared neutrality a fine hobby. Inside, a letter, 2 pages, stamped and stapled with professional self-importance. Langley's prose had learned to be less florid since court. "In the spirit of de-escalation," it said, "our client will refrain from entering your residence or contacting you directly. We request in exchange access by appointment to retrieve certain personal items of sentimental value. An attachment listed 3 objects: a quilt made by Diana's mother, a photo album labeled Ethan Childhood, and a porcelain figurine of a ballerina with a chipped heel." I read it twice because sometimes peace takes the shape of a small list. I called Angela. She read over my shoulder, then nodded. "Good," she said. "Return what doesn't hurt, with a receipt and a guardrail." "Is a figurine a guardrail?" I asked, half a joke. "It is when it has a chipped heel," she said. "It means someone remembers details." People are less dangerous when they remember details. We set a time. Wednesday at noon, public place, a conference room I could leave easily, and she could not enter without knowing the exit signs. I wrapped the quilt and the album myself, muscle memory from a life where packages meant kindness and not negotiations. I wrote a receipt with my neatest handwriting and signed my name like a woman who practices not shaking. I left the ballerina for last. The chipped heel so small, only a person who had dusted it could know. I placed her in a shoebox with tissue paper and, because I am not above a little theater when it doesn't lie, added a note: "Handle with care." That night, the house felt larger in the way rooms do when one version of a future leaves them. I took Ethan's garden notebook from its drawer, bulleted list about marigolds and tomatoes and the soil pH he swore you could taste in the fruit. On the back page he'd written, in scrawl I had loved and hated in turns: "Next year, more color." I went to the yard with a spade and a packet of marigold seeds, because promises don't have to belong to the person who made them. Under the first shallow trench, I slipped the last letter from Diana, unopened, that had arrived after court, heavy with the kind of stationery designed to command. I put soil over it because some words are best planted where they can decay. I watered the trench and watched the dark line sink. The sun had the decency to pretend it was still on duty. My hands smelled like earth, which is one of the few smells that don't lie. Inside, I locked the door, click, and leaned my forehead against it for the length of a breath. Angela texted, "You okay?" I replied, "Better than okay." I heard the sound again, click, from the other side of my mind, as if some interior lock had decided to join the choreography. I slept. Not deeply, but in a way that counted. Morning brought a small apology from the universe disguised as weather, light even, almost kind. I made coffee that tasted like survival and sat at the table with a pen and a blank card. I wrote to Jocelyn, "Thank you for the bag, the notes, and for telling me the line your mother would use. It helped. Your brother loved you. His garden will too." Then I wrote to myself on a sticky note I placed above the sink. "You don't need to rehearse your worth. Use your voice only when a lock answers." By noon, I was dressed and ready to exchange the past debris for breathing room. The quilt, the album, the ballerina with the chipped heel, a receipt, a pen, a spine. The conference room had more glass than mercy. Noon made a square of light on the table, as if to mark where honesty should sit. Angela took the side that faced the door. She likes to see exits. While I set the quilt, the album, and the shoebox ballerina on the table, with the quiet ceremony of someone returning items that never learned to behave. Diana arrived on time with Langley, each carrying a different kind of poise. She looked smaller in daylight that wasn't borrowed from a church. The pearl earrings tried to do the work grief wouldn't. Her eyes went to the packages. Her chin lifted the way people lift it when they're trying not to break in front of a person they wanted to break. "Mrs. Cross," I said, because formality is both fence and olive branch. "Thank you for agreeing to do this here." "Thank you for not throwing my mother's quilt away," she said, and the sentence walked a thin line between civility and accusation. She sat. Langley remained standing until Angela gestured to the chair like a teacher choosing not to scold a late student. Angela slid a single sheet across the table. "Receipt and stipulations," she said. "You initial here, acknowledging you are receiving only items of sentimental value as listed, that you will make no further attempts to access my client's residence, and that any additional claims will be pursued only through the court. We all prefer paper to performance." Diana glanced at Langley, who skimmed, nodded, and clicked his pen. The sound was a tiny gavel. She initialed. She didn't look at me while she did it, and I didn't need her to. When the pen left the paper, she placed her palm on the quilt, as if it might run. Her fingers smoothed the corners stitched with a pattern too fine for my eye. "My mother taught me to bind the edges by hand," she said without looking up. She said, "Machines don't know how to hold a life." "I'm returning it to the person it belongs to," I said. "I'm not returning the house." Her mouth pressed into a line that could have been respect, or defeat that refuses to slouch. "I know," she said. She reached for the ballerina last. She traced the chipped heel with a thumb, as if confirming someone had cared enough to remember which part broke. For a second, the performance flickered, and I saw the woman who once showed a little boy a fickle world and said, "Hold on to the part that doesn't move. See." Then the lights came back on behind her eyes. "If you ever change your mind about the—" "I won't," I said, gently enough to qualify as kind. She nodded, stood, and gathered the things that could be carried. Langley folded the receipt, his respect for paper undisturbed by the fact that paper had beaten him yesterday. At the door, Diana paused. "You have a strong voice," she said, and this time it wasn't a weapon. "I have a good lawyer," I said, "and a house with a lock that knows me." "Take care of it," she said. He didn't always. That was the closest we would ever come to an apology. It would have to be enough. She left. Angela exhaled a small laugh that didn't bother to be amused. "Men like Langley hate tidy endings," she said. "Let's make this one tidy anyway." We walked out into weather that had decided on overcast, Portland's way of giving people privacy. I carried the empty tote down the steps and felt relief arrive, like a train that finally kept its schedule. Slow, heavy, inevitable. At home, I put the receipt into a folder labeled court/house/peace, because naming things correctly is the least I can do for my future self. I opened windows. The house answered with a draft that smelled like rain rehearsing. I made lunch and ate it at the table like a person who lives here. The smart lock app chimed, "Front door unlocked 1:07 p.m. Rachel," and I smiled at the way a machine can tell the truth when humans won't. In the afternoon, I found the courage to do something small. I moved Ethan's framed neurologist note out of the office and into the file where it belonged. He had stuck it on the wall as a joke, proof that his brain wasn't betraying him. I slid it into a plastic sleeve and labeled it with a date. Clarity is not cruelty, I reminded myself. It's maintenance. The garden called next, the soft imperative of dirt and lists. I took his notebook back outside, turned to the page that said, "Next year, more color," and made checkboxes in the margin, because progress is sweeter when it makes noise. I planted marigolds in a wide arc and tucked basil near the kitchen steps because scent is a kind of welcome mat. Under the second row, I buried the program from the service, folded once. Not to erase it, to feed something I could see grow, Neighbors filtered by, doing the casual choreography of not intruding. A nod, a half smile, a beautiful day that carries more meaning than the weather deserves. Mrs. Gutierrez from next door left a bag of cuttings by the gate. Lavender and mint, a note that read, "He was always kind about trash day. I will miss him." And I breathed in a future I hadn't dared draw. That evening, a card slid through the mail slot and landed with the authority of good paper. The envelope was addressed in small, careful letters I recognized from grocery lists stuck to my fridge. Jocelyn. Inside, a handwritten note in black ink, words making themselves behave. Rachel, you handled everything with grace I don't yet understand. I'm sorry I stood in your doorway when I should have stood beside you. I don't know who I am without Mom's weather, but I want to find out. If you ever want company for planting, I can be quiet. J. I put the card on the mantle where things not quite trophies sit. I texted her, "Come by Saturday morning, 10 a.m., bring gloves." She replied with a sunflower emoji that made me like her in a way I hadn't let myself when loyalty to Ethan demanded I ration affection out of some old-fashioned idea of fairness. Night arrived like a friend who knocks softly. I walked the house again, a last patrol before sleep. In the office, I turned the desk lamp off and stood for a second in the little afterglow bulbs keep to prove they existed. In the bedroom, I pulled back sheets that smelled like the laundry soap I chose, not the lemon someone else poured. I set my phone on the nightstand and didn't check for messages because needing to know had finally released its grip. Before I turned the light off, I wrote one line in a notebook that wasn't Ethan's. "Sweetest revenge is the click from the inside." Then I turned the lamp, heard the click, and let it count as proof. The days that followed tilted toward ordinary like a plant toward a window. Paperwork lost its sharpness. Angela transitioned from warrior to architect, drafting the final order, tying a ribbon of language around what we had already made real. The judge signed. The envelope arrived with the county seal that always looks surprised to be trusted. I filed it. The drawer shut with the contented slide of a thing in its right place. There was one more scene left, a quiet one. I hadn't stepped into Ethan's closet since the day after the funeral. Grief had made it a museum. Anger had turned it into a storage locker. I opened the door and breathed until fabric stopped being a person. I folded what should be folded, boxed what should be boxed, set aside what should be kept. His garden hat with the sweat-stained brim, the t-shirt from the summer we thought we could learn to salsa and ended up laughing on the patio. A sweater he reached for when he was warm but needed assurance. I found, tucked into the pocket of a jacket I never liked, a note to himself. Fix laundry door. Stop letting stickiness be a feature. I laughed in a way that surprised the room and myself. Too late, I said, and slid the note into the garden notebook under next year. On Saturday at 10, Jocelyn arrived with gloves, silence, and a box of muffins that tried too hard and succeeded. We worked without talking much. She handed me tools when I reached without looking. I corrected her spacing once and she didn't snap. When we finished, we sat on the back steps with soil under our nails the way truth gets under everything. "I don't know how to stand up to Mom," she said. "I only know how to apologize after." "Try standing next to something else instead," I said. "A garden, a job, a person who tells the truth even when no one's clapping. Practice there, then move." She nodded, a slow new muscle learning its own name. "Thank you," she said, and left with lavender cuttings and, I hoped, a small map. I made lunch, answered 2 emails from clients who wanted rugs that didn't argue with their furniture, and took a nap that didn't have to defend itself. When I woke, the house was quiet, the way houses are when they know the person inside them isn't waiting for the next knock. Weeks turned into a routine that didn't have to be brave to be worthy. I worked, I watered. I texted Jocelyn pictures of the first marigold pushing a ridiculous cheerful orange through ordinary dirt. She texted back a photo of a boundary she'd practiced, a message to her mother that said, "I won't be coming by today. I need to rest." The reply back had more punctuation than tenderness, but progress is the discipline of small wins. One evening, I took a box to the curb, a tidy cube labeled with black marker, "His things, donate." Inside were shirts that belonged to a version of Ethan that only existed at parties, books he pretended to finish, gadgets that did the same job as simpler objects with more noise. I kept what held heat. I let go of what hoarded dust. People walked by with their own evenings and didn't marvel, because healing seldom makes headlines when you do it right. On the 91st day after the funeral, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that tasted of mint and quiet. The smart lock app pinged with a software update request. I approved it because little systems deserve maintenance too. My phone buzzed again, a reminder I'd written to myself on day one, resurrected by a calendar that believed in me without needing evidence. Check in. Do your locks still answer your voice? I stood, walked to the door, turned the deadbolt. Click. I smiled. Not because doors need praise, but because I wanted to offer it. I opened the drawer where I'd placed the ballerina receipt and the court order and paused. Next to them sat the spare house key Diana had left with us the year we married, the one we never used but kept because hope likes to be on a ring. I took it out, set it in my palm, and considered the small sermon it had been preaching all this time about trust and access, and the difference between welcome and entitlement. I carried it to the garden. I dug a narrow trench between marigolds, slipped the key into the soil, and covered it. Not a burial, a planting. A reminder that access, like everything else worth keeping, should be rooted where it can grow or decompose in peace. That night, I sat on the porch with a book I actually read. The streetlights did their soft algebra on the sidewalk. Somewhere, a neighbor practiced scales on a piano with the persistence of a person who knows being good is less dramatic than being consistent. I closed the book and listened. The house breathed. I breathed with it. A car door thudded. A laugh drifted. Nothing asked to be solved. Inside, I washed my hands and turned off lights one by one. At the bedroom door, I looked back down the hall, toward the office and the kitchen and the front door that had learned my name. I heard the click it makes when I lock it from the inside, sound as punctuation, as prayer, as proof. I climbed into bed, a body in a room in a house that is mine. I didn't rehearse what I'd say if someone tried to take it again. I didn't bargain with air. I let sleep come the way the garden does, quietly, honestly, after work you can point to. In the morning, I woke up in a life that didn't apologize for being ordinary. I made coffee that would never win a competition and didn't need to. I opened the back door and stepped into a yard where new color had begun to keep old promises. I pressed my palm to the frame on my way out, a small ritual, and said what I had learned to say when locks answer and paper holds and my voice feels like mine. I am home.